I'd also like to officially welcome our 3 new board members, all appointed by Governor Newsom. Mary Tykert from Granite Bay is our general engineering contractor member. Tykert Construction holds the oldest A license in California, number 8. Jim Ruin from San Bruno is a specialty member. Jim is well known as the former mayor of San Bruno during the gas explosions. Did a good job, thank you. And Diana Love from Palmdale is our public member who is also a member of Statewide Senior Citizens Organization. Diana is also a member of the California Senior Legislature. I'd like to ask all 3 to take a couple of moments to tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll start with Mary.
Thank you. Mary Tykert. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Tykert Inc., so we have construction as well as mining activities. I'm the 5th generation of my family to run Tykert. My great-great-grandfather Adolf was a foreman for the guy who invented expansion joints, so we've been doing concrete for 132 years. It's pretty cool, and added on grading and paving and other interesting things along the way. So I've been with Tykert for about 15 years, started in the quality assurance lab, and I've done everything from engineering services to estimating, takeoff, in a few of our divisions, and I've been chief operating officer for almost 7 years. So I've got 2 boys who are 14 and 16, and the oldest one just started driving, so I'm very happy to be here safely parked, as is he.
Thank you. Jim?
Jim Ruane, native San Franciscan, married to Noreen for 46 years, have 5 wonderful grandsons. On a business note, I'm the president of Patrick J. Ruane Incorporated, started by my uncle in 1940, a lath, plaster, and drywall company, and we've worked all around the state of California and received a number of awards for our specialty, which is historic restoration. And then on a more political note, I ran for city council in the city of San Bruno in 1995 and was elected. Stayed on the council for 22 years. San Bruno has the distinction of being the only elected mayor in San Mateo County out of 20 cities. So in 2009, I ran for mayor and was elected. And a number of months after that, we had a horrific PG&E explosion, which killed 8 people and destroyed 38 homes and a neighborhood. And we weren't just going to rebuild and wipe our tears. We decided to take it further. We discovered an awful lot of irregularities, to say the least, with PG&E and the Public Utilities Commission, which led to 6 felony counts, including obstruction of justice, $1.6 billion in fines, and a restitution for the city of $70 million, which we use now for scholarships and community awards. So something I'm very proud of, and we're still trying to get through it because obviously the utility still has some issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Diana?
Good morning and happy holiday to everyone here. I am retired. I have spent the majority of my life in the field of gerontology, which is the study of aging, and trying to help seniors in every way that I possibly can. I am currently an ambassador with the city of Palmdale, and I do things with mental health. I'm a liaison with AARP, and I'm a delegate within the community. And I work around the community and the outskirts of the community as much as possible to try to ensure to help seniors with their voice as to what their concerns are and their issues. And since I've been appointed to this board, I must say the people in the community that have heard about me being appointed have reached out to me, and with the help of staff, I've been able to point them in the right direction. So I'm excited about trying to help seniors. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is agenda item B, presentation of certificates of recognition. This is a standing agenda item. Today we are not recognizing a particular person, but I would like to extend my general gratitude to the CSLB staff for their hard work over the past year. We've truly had a good year, and everybody's worked pretty hard, and it seems like everything's coming around. So thank you for all your hard work, as I'm sure I'm expressing all the board members. Thank you. So thank you. Next, let's go on to agenda item C, which is for public comment and requests for agenda items for the future meetings. The board values public input as part of our consumer protection mission. To allow us enough time to conduct our full schedule of business today, I am limiting public comments to 3 minutes apiece. If your comments don't involve an item on today's agenda, this would be the time where you can make them. If you have comments on one of our agenda items, we'd encourage you to wait until that agenda item. We'll give you an opportunity to make your comments at that time. There are a few rules that apply. First, California law prohibits board members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment. Also, we're not allowed to act on any item not on today's agenda. Second, if you want the board to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that item on an agenda for future meetings. Finally, if you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the board, we ask that you do not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. That's because the board members may be the judges and by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in that case. At this time, are there any members of the public who wish to address the board or offer a possible agenda item for a future meeting? Take a microphone.
There we go. My name is Frank Graniola. I have a General B license and a law degree. I'm applying for my A license. I run a small business in California, Green Constructors. When applying for my license, it eventually occurred to me that I need to research the Business and Professions Code to determine what the governing authority for the license application process was. And the Business and Professions Code is written poorly, to say the least. And the board, the Contractor State License Board, has a 1,219-page book on the license application process and the laws that govern the licensing. And nowhere in the entire book does it say what the experience requirement is for any of the contractor licenses, particularly in my case, the A license. And I think it is pretty easy, and it's something that I want to help with to come up with some clear and concise language that can be published for the people to read, to know whether they are qualified for licensure and what they need to put together to show the board that they are qualified for licensure, and a clear, simple document that the board can distribute internally throughout the entire organization so that everybody reviewing a license application can look at a clear checklist and see whether the applicants do in fact meet whatever policy the Contractor State License Board determines would be whatever you guys want to implement for what the requirements are. Come up with a requirement, decide on it, agree upon it, publish it so that the license application process is not arbitrary and capricious. I really encourage you guys to take a look at the way that you're implementing the applications process for licensure, because I don't think it's being done very well right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other public comment? Seeing none, do any board members have an agenda item that they'd like placed on a future meeting? Seeing none. Let's move to our Enforcement Committee. That's agenda item D. For that, I'd like to turn it over to Nancy Springer, our committee chair.
Good morning, thank you. So agenda item D1, review and possible approval of the November 7, 2019 Enforcement Committee meeting summary report. There was an Enforcement Committee meeting on November 7, and the summary report begins on page 11. But before I go into that, I would just like to state a thank you to Board Member Michael Layden, because unfortunately I wasn't able to make that, and I was the chair of the committee. I was excused that day, and he stepped up to do that, so just want to go on record to thank him for coming forward to do that. So the summary report for this committee meeting is on page 11. Do any of the board members from the Enforcement Committee have any edits or changes? Seeing none. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none. May I have a motion to approve the November 7th Enforcement Committee meeting summary report?
So moved.
Is there any public comment on this item? Please take call roll.
Johnny Simpson. Kevin Albanese, he's absent. Frank Altamura.
Yes.
Augie Beltran. David Delatorre.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Yes.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Diana Love. Marla Roach-Hudson is absent. Jimmy Rain. Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Mary Tykert.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Agenda item D2, Enforcement Program Update. I'm going to start by turning this over to our Chief of Enforcement, Ms. E. Vickery, to discuss the internal policy and procedure changes to the reduced expenditures.
Thank you, Nancy. Beginning on page 17 of your packet, you will find that enforcement has developed and implemented measures to reduce expenditures while not compromising consumer protection. I would like to highlight some of those processes that we have implemented. We are taking a close look at vacant positions, but we are optimistic that with the emergency fee increase that we'll be able to fill all vacancies. Currently, we have 18 vacant positions, and we are focusing on prioritizing our consumer service representative vacancies. This will help consumers and licensees resolve their complaints when there are no major violations of the contractor's law. We've increased the use of the letter of admonishment between January and September 2019. We have issued 165 letters of admonishment and 119 fewer citations compared to the same period last year. Issuing letters of admonishment will allow us to resolve cases with informal office conferences rather than the referral to the Attorney General's office and a hearing before an ALJ. A letter of admonishment can include a corrective action plan, and if the corrective action plan requirements are not met, CSLB may issue an administrative citation. Public disclosure for a letter of admonishment is 1 year. Starting on page 17 and continuing on page 18, you'll see information pertaining to administrative citations. CSLB issues administrative citations for egregious violations of the law. On October 24th, CSLB staff met with AG leadership and the presiding law judge to discuss the need for higher civil penalties. This meeting has afforded us the opportunity to meet with judges statewide. We plan that meeting sometime in the beginning of this next year. We will be discussing the need to increase the maximum assessment of civil penalties during the next agenda item. In January 2019, CSLB received authorization to conduct informal citation conferences in order to resolve appealed citations. This process has proven very effective, and CSLB does not incur costs of the Attorney General representation, and conferences can be scheduled more quickly than administrative formal appeal hearings. That concludes my update.
Thank you, Missy. An update on CSLB's disaster response and proactive enforcement in the disaster area will begin on page 18. Some points to note is that CSLB staffed the local assistance centers for the Sandalwood, Saddle Ridge, Kincaid, and Getty fires to assist fire victims in the rebuilding efforts. In mid-October, the statewide investigative fraud team, SWIFT, conducted a sting operation in the Coffee Park disaster area in Santa Rosa with the assistance of the Sonoma County and Marin County District Attorney's offices. There was a 2-day operation resulted in the issuance of 12 notices to appear in criminal court for unlicensed practice and 1 stop order for lack of workers' compensation insurance. Additionally, we do have a highlight on page 19 that details the felony conviction of an unlicensed contractor that was attempting to bid jobs in the car fire declared disaster area. As we have a new board members joining us today, I wanted to show a brief video which provides an overview of the board's disaster response efforts. Do we need to move?
Should we hit the lights?
You're welcome. That's the sweater comment. Mr. Rogers?
There we go.
2018, 2 of 3 homes on Tara's family compound burned to the ground. As Tara and her dad sift through the leftover ashes of their homestead,
There's guilt. There's nothing but guilt.
emotions run high.
It's hard to keep positive a lot of times.
Paradise, a place just as beautiful as its name, is now just a ghost town.
The total devastation of everybody's gone, and it feels like the frontier. So.
It's very quiet. We're not used to that.
But sounds of chainsaws and construction echo in the distance.
I would like to rebuild. I feel very passionate about it.
The sound of progress is music to Tara's ears, an ray of hope as wrecking crews level out her property to make way for a new paradise.
I like the idea of being a part of a process of something to recover.
Tara has had 5 generations of family live right here on this property. Obviously, she can't stay here for now, but she'd like to come back and keep her family together. Fireproof material just might be what keeps Tara's family intact.
This is twice as hot as a normal wildfire would be.
Contractor Corey Averill is working with architect J. Paul Acero to rebuild Tara's homes. They're using insulated concrete forms instead of wood.
It's hundreds of times stronger than a wood structure, and it's completely fireproof.
It holds the concrete so in a way that reduces costs.
And that helps struggling survivors like Tara.
You don't have to be a framer to put these blocks up, so they're going to help put the blocks up, and we're going to all build her house with the blocks.
Aside from Acero's building designs, it's his duty as the architect to determine how much rebar and concrete filler is needed and what type to use. Frustrations are also a factor.
It will take longer in the plan review process. Waiting and waiting and waiting, and so for them it's very emotionally challenging during that process.
In Paradise, finding resources is another big challenge.
The subcontractors who come in have to live someplace, and they have to drive from far away, and so therefore we've got increased costs.
So we feel good about this, what we're doing. We're helping.
While Tara Morrow is concerned that no one else will build, being a light shining through the soot and grime is worth the risk.
I am very positive that it's going to be beautiful, and I hope it encourages other people to build too. Just keep holding on.
For the Peel by DCA, I'm Sherry Gyro.
And just as a note to that, last board meeting, we were up in the area and some of us had taken a tour of the area. And so one of the very first houses has been rebuilt, and they are in that rebuild mode. They're Paradise Strong, and we wish them the best. And it's good that CSLB is up there doing their job to protect those consumers that are rebuilding. So moving on to the investigation highlights. They start on page 19, and they 19 to 22 there, the top of 22. But there's one that we want to note on the bottom of page 21. There's a highlight entitled "Homeowner Overcharged Almost $150,000." In this case, the respondent, Hans Dornsife, entered into a $215,000 home improvement contract to complete a kitchen remodel. Mr. Dornsife received over $150,000 after only completing $8,000 worth of work and subsequently abandoned the project. The investigator referred this case to the San Mateo District Attorney's Office for prosecution. Mr. Dornsife was charged with 2 felonies, 3 misdemeanors, and on June 24, 2019, an arrest warrant was issued with the bail amount set at $100,000. Mr. Dornsife has been added to the CSLB's most wanted list. I'm now going to turn it over to Chief Enforcement, Missy Vickery, to discuss the general complaint handling statistics and to provide an update on the activities of SWIFT. Missy?
Thank you, Nancy. Moving on to complaint handling, which begins on page 22 of your packet, you will see that caseloads remain manageable. Complaint negotiation efforts by staff have proven successful and have assisted in getting more than $18 million in restitution to financially injured parties. Staff have been consistent in continuing to achieve board goals and objectives of dispositioning an average of 10 cases per month. Arbitration proves to be an effective tool with 638 cases initiated, resulting in $3 million in restitution. You will see on page 24 of your packet that the SWIFT unit participates in the Labor Enforcement Task Force, otherwise known as LATF, which is comprised of investigators from CSLB, Department of Industrial Relations, and EDD, to combat the underground economy and level the playing field. The statistics on page 24 show that that task force has been quite successful. There is a meeting set for next month with Margie Green, Executive Officer from Nevada Contractors Board, Shannon Chambers, who is the Nevada State Labor Commissioner, Dominic Forrest, who is the Director of California's LATF Operations, Registrar Foat, and myself to discuss Nevada doing something similar in their state to protect their licensees from unfair business practices, proper payment of wages, and unsafe working conditions. That concludes my update.
Thank you, Missy. Is there any board discussion on this item? Seeing none. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. Agenda item D3, possible amendments to the Business and Profession Code, section 7099.2. So item D3 is on page 27. Review, discussion, and the possible action to pursue legislation to amend that section 70992. As was previously discussed at the November 7th Enforcement Committee meeting, we will be addressing two issues pertaining to the Business and Professions Code, section 70992, for the board's consideration. Issue number 1 involves civil penalty assessments, and issue number 2 involves letters of admonishment. Starting with issue number 1, it addresses the desire to increase the civil penalty assessment threshold amount. Currently, BPC 70992, Section B, establishes $5,000 as the maximum civil penalty allowed for most violations of contractor license law. Only violations of BPC 7114, aiding and abetting or conspiring, and BPC, hiring an unlicensed contractor, allow for a maximum penalty of $15,000. Additionally, filing a false workers' compensation insurance exemption, a violation of BPC section 7125.4, has a maximum penalty of $5,000. The $5,000 maximum cap on civil penalty assessments was last increased in 2003. And the violation-specific cap was instituted in 1992 and has never been adjusted to reflect the increases in California's Consumer Price Index, CPI. Since 1992, the CPI has increased 92%, and since 2003, it has increased 48%. Applying the respective CPI increases to the existing caps would bring the general cap to $7,400 and the violation-specific amount to $28,800. BPC section 7125.4 makes it a cause for discipline for a contractor to have employees without providing workers' compensation. The maximum civil penalty of $5,000 does not reflect current economic conditions in the state's construction industry. For perspective, a C8 concrete contractor who has 10 full-time employees and a payroll of $500,000 would pay an estimated annual workers' comp insurance premium of $28,000 to $40,000 per the State Compensation Insurance Fund website. For some licensees, the $5,000 civil penalty is a small price to pay in relation to the actual cost of insuring their employees. With rounding and some allowance for future CPI increases, staff propose raising the general cap for civil penalties from $5,000 to $8,000, raising the violation-specific cap from $15,000 to $30,000, and including violations of 7125.4 as one of the violation-specific penalty assessments listed in BPC Section 7099.2, subsection B, therefore raising the maximum penalty from $5,000 to $30,000. Is there any board discussion on this item? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item?
Good morning, board members. Richard Marcus, and on behalf of the Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors of California. We discussed this provision and recommendation on a recent call, and one of the questions that came up that I would submit for your consideration is whether the penalty should include a floor as well, particularly since there's no assurance that an ALJ or the person imposing the fine would set it at a level to reimburse the board for their investigative costs unless that is a separate assessment. It would seem that it might be appropriate to set a floor so that the board had some assurance that it was going to be at least covering its investigative costs.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Christy?
Just for the board's information, so at the end of the day, the board or the registrar always has the option of rejecting anything an administrative law judge recommends in a decision. So if the board or the registrar feels that that amount that has been modified by the administrative law judge is not legally defensible or supportable, or that the evidence has been proven, then the registrar always has the discretion to reject that, whatever that fine amount that the administrative law judge recommends.
Just for clarification, it's my understanding if this legislation was to be chaptered, that we would need to conduct regulatory hearings, and through that process, we could raise the floor.
Correct, but my point is that I think the commenter mentioned that we would want to set the floor because of what an administrative law judge might do, but you always have the discretion to disregard a recommendation that an administrative law judge makes. So I just want to make that clear, just for purposes of deliberation.
Thank you, Christy. I think we said any more public comment? Okay, thank you. So there is a motion from the Enforcement Committee that addresses the changes in civil penalties. Since this recommendation comes from the committee of the board, it comes to you as a fully formed motion and needs no first and second prior to a vote. The motion. At this time, the Enforcement Committee recommends that the full board pursue a legislative proposal to, 1, amend Business and Professions Code, Section 7099.2, subsection B, to increase the maximum civil penalty assessments specified from $5,000 to $8,000, and from $15,000 to $30,000 for violations of Business and Professions Code, Section 7114 and Section 7118. And 2, add violations of Business and Professions Code, Section 7125.4, filing false exemptions for workers' compensation insurance to the violation-specific penalty assessments listed in the statute. Is there any public comment on this item? Felice, please call roll.
Charlie Simpson.
Aye.
Kevin Albanese is absent. Frank Altamira.
Aye.
Augie Beltran.
Aye.
David De La Torre.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Yes.
Susan Granzella.
Yes.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Jim Ruane.
Yes.
Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Mary Tykert.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Issue number 2, as it applies to the Business Professions Code, Section 70992, addresses the inclusion of more than one violation of the Contractor State License Law in a single letter of admonishment, LOA, issued to a licensee. Currently, the Business and Professions Code, Section 70992, subsection C6, precludes the use of a LOA if multiple violations have been established. To ensure that an LOA not be issued to egregious offenders for whom a citation or accusation would be more appropriate, close-in action. However, many of the CSLB consumer complaint investigations establish multiple minor violations. An example is this: when a consumer files a complaint and the licensee agrees to settle any financial dispute. However, the licensee is out of name, style, and contract, has technical violations of the home improvement contract requirements. These investigations might be appropriate for closure with a LOA, particularly one that includes a corrective action plan. The unintended consequences of the restriction are as follows. 1, the field investigator who established the multiple minor violations and elected to use the LOA can select only one of the violations for use in the LOA. 2, the additional violations will be disregarded and will not be captured in the CSLB's database, making them unavailable in future investigations into the same licensee. The third item being, additionally, the alternative to a LOA in the event of multiple violations would be the issuance of a citation for non-egregious violations which have proven costly and results in delays in the resolution for the consumer and compliance by the contractor. Is there any board discussion on this item? Seeing none. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, no public comment. There is a motion from the Enforcement Committee that addresses the multi-violation restriction. Since this recommendation comes from a committee of the board, it comes to you as a fully formed motion and needs no first and second prior to a vote. The motion. At this time, the Enforcement Committee recommends that the full board pursue a legislative proposal to eliminate the multi-violation restriction for letters of admonishment in the Business and Professions Code, Section 7099.2, subsection C. Is there any public comment? Felice, please call roll.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Frank Altamura.
Aye.
Augie Beltran.
Aye.
David De La Torre.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Yes.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Jim Ruane.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Mary Tykert.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Felice. Agenda item D4, strategies to address unlicensed activity. So we're going to move to this. This is on page 33. We're going to review regarding strategies to address that. Before we get into the background, I would like to thank Board Member David Diaz for his commitment to identifying those that are contracting without a license. David has assisted in locating properties for CSLB to utilize for sting operations. He has been a valuable resource for public works and enforcement strategies, and he has provided outstanding leads over the years. David, you had recently observed unlicensed activity in the field. Would you like to share your observations and thoughts on the subject?
Sure. Thanks, Nancy. So every night I come home and my dogs tell me that they need to take me on a walk. So I get home, take my dogs on a walk, and I walk them around the neighborhood, or I'll do it on a Saturday morning. And I noticed in just my neighborhood of, I don't know how many homes are where I do my about 3-mile walk, that are always under some kind of construction. It's either an outbuilding, painting, solar, concrete, plumbing, HVAC. So on the walk, I'll stop and I'll just ask, so what's going on, whatever, and then I'll look at their truck. I've sent licenses to Dave, and I know he sends them over to Missy, and they look at it and go, okay, well, this person's not licensed, this and this and this. And so, but I'll ask, and like one day I came home and there was solar being put on the roof, and I go, well, how come you have 3 different shirts of contractors, but you're actually, none of the shirts that anybody's wearing is actually the contractor doing the job on the solar? Well, we're all independent contractors. Okay, that's good. And then I hit up my neighbors going, why are you hiring unlicensed contractors? And the neighbors were going, well, can't you just let that slide because, you know, we're just trying to get this work done. And I said, well, you know what? I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States and California. I didn't swear an oath to you. So no, I cannot let it slide. And so it back and forth. So maybe I don't make that many friends around the neighborhood.
Not invited to the party, huh?
So, but that's not what I'm here for. But this is something that if I go to basically almost any neighborhood that's probably been around a while, or even maybe newer ones, it happens everywhere. I go over to my daughter's house to see my grandkids, and so, in fact, I noticed Jim talking, he said something about his wife and his grandkids, but didn't mention his kids. I noticed that when you're a grandfather, like I am, that happens a lot.
You bypass a generation.
Yeah. So anyhow, so I go over there and I see the same thing, and it's just everywhere I go around, you see this stuff either happening on the weekends, during the week, whatever it is, but you talk to them, and they're all these guys that are independent contractors or just not licensed at all. We need to do something with that. Sting operations help. I know they do. I've been on a lot of them. But I think it's a lot more spread throughout the state than we actually really realize. And I know that if we really need to focus on that. I know our licensing renewals are down, and I think it's a good portion of it's probably because they don't get caught. The workers' comp, none of them have them because they're independent contractors. I look up a license of the guys that are independent contractors. No, they don't have any workers' comp because they don't have any employees. It's just them. Well, when you have 3 different independent contractors on one job, that's just it. My wife's hotel was the same thing. They had a contractor, but he hired a bunch of independent contractors to do the work that weren't licensed contractors. And so that's the thing. And I think we need to really address this moving forward, even more than we have been. And like I said, I think it's a worse problem than we even realize. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, David. Unlicensed contracting substantially contributes to California's multi-billion-dollar underground economy. And with the redirection of CSLB SWIFT team over the last 2 years working the fire-ravaged disaster areas, we do need to have some new strategies to take care of what Dave's saying here, to further combat that unlicensed activity as required. So working towards this, in March 18th, CalBO had their annual business meeting, California Association of Building Officials. CSLB, CalBO and CSLB began developing a pilot program that promotes the collaboration between CSLB staff and the local building officials and their inspectors. So currently, CSLB, we're in verbal negotiations with 6 building departments, 2 in the northern region, 2 in the central, and 2 in the southern region, with which to collaborate. So this is our start. Once the partnership is established here, then the SWIFT staff will work to do the following in an effort to define just how bad the unlicensed activity is in the defined jurisdictions. They'll perform outreach to the building departments, be available to attend staff meetings. They'll request permission to review suspicious owner-builder permits, partner to identify suspects performing unlicensed activity at permitted and unpermitted construction sites, and then they'll work with the local government officials to identify potential sting properties. Is there any board discussion on this item? Okay, see none. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, none there. So we'll move on to item D5, the 2019-21 Strategic Plan Objectives. This is on page 37. The actual plan is on 39 there. So in reviewing this strategic plan, the packet, the Enforcement Division has been very successful in meeting the objectives set forth. And I'm going to turn it over to further discussion to Missy Vickery, Chief, for a strategic plan update. Missy?
Thank you, Nancy. We've previously discussed objectives 2.1 through 2.9. Today I'll brief you on items 2.7 and 2.9. For item 2.7, which is to provide training opportunities to improve morale and staff knowledge, on October 14th, Christy Shields of DCA's Legal Affairs Division presented specialized training to all supervisors and managers in CSLB's Enforcement Division. The training focused on elements required for 3 violations of the Business and Professions Code: 7114, aiding and abetting an unlicensed contractor; 7118, hiring an unlicensed contractor; and 7117, acting as a contractor under unlicensed name or personnel. That training was very well received. Thank you. For item 2.9, which is attend job fairs to promote employment opportunities at CSLB, 2 staff members represented CSLB at a career fair at Sacramento State University on September 30th and October 1st, 2019. They spoke with many individuals regarding employment opportunities here at CSLB, as well as gave information about becoming a licensed contractor to those who were graduating from construction management classes. That concludes my update.
Thank you, Vinci. Any board discussion on this item? Any public comment on this item? Well, thank you all. That concludes the enforcement section.